Hello and welcome to this psychology topic video, this one looking at how to write a model answer for A-level sample assessment material set 1, paper 3, question 3, which is on levels of explanation. So here's the question, and it says briefly outline what psychologists mean by levels of explanation for 2 marks. Okay. Now although it's only a short answer question, this term level of explanation can cause some confusion, and it's embedded within the specification in terms of reductionism and holism. So let's have a look and first of all actually see what we mean exactly by this idea of levels of explanation. So we know that there's a reductionism-holism debate in psychology, and reductionism is the belief that human behaviour can be explained by breaking it down into more simple component parts, okay? Versus holism, on the other hand, which comes from the Greek word holos, which means whole or all or entire, and this is the idea that we should view and examine human behaviour as a whole integrated experience. So those are the two extreme ends of the debate. However, actually, the reductionism argument argues that there are different levels in which we can explain human behaviour, starting with the lowest level, which we might see as biological, moving up to more psychological levels, and then moving up to maybe social and cultural explanations for behaviour. Okay, as we move up these levels of explanation, we slowly become more holistic. Okay, so the more we would reach sort of social and cultural explanations for behaviour, the more we're starting to take into account a whole multitude of factors that could account for human behaviour. Now that's quite a complex sort of concept to understand, so it's usually best to sort of consider this in relation to a particular example. So if we think about memory, which you study in both year 1 and year 2 psychology through different topics, if we think about biological explanations, there's a study you look at in the biopsychology topic by Maguire that considers memory just in terms of one component or one part of the brain. So Maguire actually determined that the role of the hippocampus in the brain is related to spatial navigation and spatial memory. So what Maguire's done is broken down a very complex phenomenon like memory to just one factor, the role of the hippocampus in relation to spatial navigation, one type of memory. So really reduced it down to one small component. So that might be the lowest level of explanation. If we move up a notch and look at different psychological explanations, you'll know from your study of memory in year 1 that psychologists consider memory in relation to a whole sort of multitude of different factors. And I've given a couple of examples there. So Miller looked at the capacity of short-term memory. Peterson examined the duration of short-term memory. And these psychologists are all taking into account different psychological factors that contribute to our memory. And this would be seen as sort of slightly higher in terms of explanation than a purely biological explanation. Right at the very top, you may or may not have studied this when you looked at schema theory. We can also explain memory in terms of social and cultural factors. And there's research that suggests that our own cultural expectations affects what we remember and what we recall. And there's a very famous study by Bartlett who looked at exactly this, that suggests that actually, depending upon where we're from in the world, will shape what we remember about a story, and then subsequently what we actually recall about that story. And you can see that that is a much more holistic explanation. And then if we went one step further than that, you can see right at the top, a holistic explanation would be considering absolutely everything, viewing the whole integrated experience. So in short, the sort of levels of explanation concept is essentially saying that we move from very, very sort of finite or very small levels of explanation at the bottom being biological. And as we progress up the levels of explanation, we become more and more holistic in the way we view behaviour. Okay? Now let's go back to that question, briefly explain what psychologists mean by levels of explanation for 2 marks. So how do we condense all that down to just a 2-mark answer? And here's a suggested answer. So I've said the reductionism side of the debate suggests that behaviour can be explained by breaking it down into more simple component parts. Now there are different levels of explanation with reductionism, starting with the lowest levels that reduce behaviour to an individual biological factor, for example genes and neurochemistry, up to more holistic higher levels that consider a range of factors, for example social and cultural explanations. Okay, and that should be enough to make sure we're securing those 2 marks, because we're acknowledging the 2 different extremes within levels of explanation and providing some examples to support that. Okay. Hope you found that video useful. For more videos and for more events coming up, do visit our websites. We've got plenty of webinars coming up in the near future. If you've got any questions, do ask us via Twitter or via our Facebook groups. And I hope you found that useful again, and thank you for watching.